Please, no, don't do this! Justin! I beg, Murphy!
The sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier town of Ridge, turning the dirt streets into a river of dust that twisted with every gust of wind. Men in worn leather boots and wide-brimmed hats clustered around the auction yard, shouting bids and jeering at one another. Horses stamped and snorted in their pens, hooves churning the earth into clouds of powdery dust. The air smelled of sweat, hay, and desperation. This was a place where a man's worth was measured by the cattle he owned and the land he could claim, where every deal came with a risk, and sometimes a cruelty that could make even the hardest heart flinch. Cole Ramsey adjusted the brim of his hat against the glare of the sun. A rancher through and through, he had come today to buy 2 horses, a strong bay for his work on the open prairie, and a younger colt with promise for the ranch hands. Nothing more, nothing less. He had no interest in other curiosities or bargains until the auctioneer called the next lot. Lot 27, the auctioneer bellowed, voice rasping over the din. A fine pair of horses, perfect for work or ride, and a little bonus for the right bidder. He gave a crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. A woman, if you can believe it, cheap, might fetch less than the hay for your horses. The crowd erupted into hoots and laughter. Some men leaned forward, whistling at the audacity. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The woman stepped onto the platform, a small figure with shoulders curved, eyes cast downward. Her hair was tangled and matted with dust, her dress torn and faded from hard use. She trembled not from the cold, there was none, but from the fear that radiated off her in palpable waves. She didn't shout, she didn't plead, she didn't even resist, but her eyes told a story more compelling than any words could. Wide, dark, and glimmering with the sheen of unshed tears, they scanned the crowd, searching for a savior she feared she would never find. Every muscle in her body was taut with tension, her hands clenched into fists as though holding onto the last shred of her dignity. Cole's gaze locked onto her immediately. He noticed the bruises darkening her wrists, the calluses on her hands that told of endless labor, and the shadow of a life spent under someone else's control. His fingers twitched around his wallet, an impulse he could not yet explain. He had come to buy horses, not meddle in people's lives, yet something about her presence rooted him to the spot. The auctioneer's voice rose again. "All right, gentlemen, bidding starts at 50 for the horses. Who'll go 50? Hands shot up, voices shouted numbers, and Cole's mind was only half on the exchange. His attention was elsewhere, on the quiet desperation emanating from the woman. Then she leaned slightly toward him, so close that he could hear her breath catch. In a voice barely above a whisper, she said words that cut through the chaos of the auction yard like a knife. "Please don't sell me." Cole's stomach tightened. The sound of it, the sheer, vulnerable pleading, made the heat of the day irrelevant, made the shouting of the crowd fade into static. Every principle he had clashed in that instant. He had no desire to insert himself into someone else's problem, yet he could not ignore the quiet agony in her voice. "She's just baggage," the auctioneer sneered, noticing Cole's hesitation. "Don't waste time, someone will take her." Cole's jaw set. He turned to look at her fully now, taking in the small frame, the way her knees shook under the weight of her fear, the way her lips quivered even as she forced herself to stay upright. She was terrified, yes, but there was also something stubborn, almost defiant in her posture, a spark of life refusing to be extinguished. The bidding for the horses continued, loud and aggressive. Hands were raised, voices shouted numbers, the air thickened with tension and dust. Cole felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Every fiber of his being told him to focus on the horses, yet his conscience would not allow him to look away. He remembered the stories from the older ranchers, women and children sold like property, lives treated as mere commodities. He had always felt disgusted by the practice, but seeing it in person, witnessing her trembling, witnessing her whispered plea, it ignited a fire inside him. The crowd began to murmur. "What's the cowboy waiting for? You gonna bid or just stare? One man chuckled, elbowing another. Looks like he's soft-hearted boys. Cole ignored them. He raised his voice, calm but firm. I'll take the horses and the woman. A stunned silence fell over the yard. Some of the men laughed nervously, unsure if he was joking. The auctioneer blinked, caught off guard, then barked a harsh laugh. You can't be serious. She's worthless. Nobody wants her. She's not for sale, Cole replied evenly, stepping toward the platform. No one deserves to be treated like this. The woman froze, confusion mingling with fear in her eyes. Could this stranger really be serious? Could someone actually care enough to defy the auctioneer, defy the crowd, and offer her freedom? Cole cut the ropes that bound her wrists with a sharp knife he kept at his side. The cords fell to the ground with a snap, and she rubbed her sore wrists instinctively, her body still trembling. She covered her face with her hands, trying to hide the mixture of relief, shock, and tears. You don't have to worry anymore, Cole said softly, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You're safe now, come on. She looked up at him, eyes wide, glimmering with disbelief. I thank you, she whispered, voice breaking. I don't even know how to repay you. You don't need to, he said simply. Just come with me, let's get you someplace safe. The auctioneer scowled, but no one dared stop Cole. He led her through the dust-choked yard and out onto the long road that led to his ranch. With every step, she kept glancing at him, as if unsure whether he was a savior or just another man in a cruel world. Cole stole a glance at her, noting the tension in her shoulders, the cautious grace in her movements. Her dress, tattered and sun-bleached, flapped in the breeze. Dust clung to her hair and skin. Yet despite the obvious hardships she had endured, there was a quiet dignity about her, a light in her eyes that refused to be snuffed out. As they rode in silence, the horses' hooves pounding against the hard-packed dirt road, Cole felt the weight of responsibility settle on his broad shoulders. This woman, Leela, as she had finally whispered her name, was not just a stranger. She was someone who had survived unimaginable cruelty, and now her life depended on his choices. He did not speak much, letting her adjust to the rhythm of the ride. She stayed silent, her hands folded tightly in her lap, yet he could feel her studying him, reading him, testing whether he was trustworthy. He could not explain why he had done this, why he had chosen her over any number of safer, simpler options. Perhaps it was the whispered plea that had struck him. Perhaps it was the injustice of it all. Perhaps it was a sense of duty he could not ignore. By the time they reached the edge of the ranch, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in strokes of orange and crimson. The wide plain stretched endlessly before them, promising both freedom and isolation. Cole opened the gate, and the horses trotted in with ease. He dismounted first, holding out a hand to Leela. She hesitated, then took it, stepping down carefully. Her legs wobbled, weak from fear and exhaustion, but she held herself upright, meeting his gaze with a flicker of trust. You'll be safe here, he promised, his voice steady and reassuring. No one's going to harm you, not while I'm around. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she could not speak. Then she whispered, almost to herself, I don't know how I got so lucky. Cole shook his head with a faint, grim smile. Luck had nothing to do with it. Some things you just do because they're right. As she looked around the ranch, eyes taking in the barns, the grazing cattle, and the wide-open sky, Leela felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. A fragile, fluttering hope that maybe, just maybe, there could be a life beyond fear. Cole watched her, nodding the careful way she moved, the subtle tension in her shoulders that told him she was not yet free from the past's shadow. He did not press her. He would wait, as he always had. Because sometimes the most important thing you could do for someone was simply give them a chance to breathe again. The evening air cooled, carrying the scent of grass and horses. Somewhere on the ranch a dog barked. Leela inhaled deeply, feeling for the first time in years that she could possibly, maybe, belong somewhere. Cole did not know what secrets she carried, nor what dangers might follow them back to this quiet ranch. But he knew one thing with certainty: he could not turn away. Not now, not ever. And as the last light of day faded over the sprawling prairie, two lives, one hardened by struggle, the other marked by compassion, began to intertwine in ways neither could have foreseen. The ranch lay quiet under the fading glow of sunset, its vast expanse of prairie stretching into the horizon, golden and wild. Cole Ramsey led Leela down the worn path to the modest farmhouse he called home. Dust from the long ride clung to their boots, and the lingering warmth of the day wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood smoke, hay, and the remnants of a simple life. Cole's dog, a lean border collie with alert eyes, padded toward them, tail wagging, sensing something had changed. Leela hesitated at the threshold, gripping her dress tightly, fingers white around the thin fabric. Her breathing was shallow, as if she were bracing for a danger that had been her constant companion for years. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward her like an accusation. Cole noticed the tension in her shoulders and stepped closer. "You don't have to talk yet," he said softly, his voice low, steady, grounding. "Not until you're ready." She glanced up at him, her eyes wide and uncertain, then nodded, though not convincingly. It was clear she wanted to trust him, but trust had been a dangerous luxury in her life. Days passed on the ranch, each one marked by simple, grounding routines. Leela helped tend the horses, brushing and feeding them, her hands moving with careful precision. She collected eggs from the chicken coop, repaired a sagging fence post, and swept the floors with a diligence that impressed Cole. She spoke little, her words measured and careful, yet her presence filled the house with a quiet intensity. Cole watched her closely, noting the subtle signals of unease that never left her. The way she flinched at sudden noises, the way her eyes darted toward shadows, the way she seemed to carry an invisible weight on her small frame. It wasn't fear of him. He could see she was wary of the world. She had endured too much to trust easily. One evening, as the sky bled shades of crimson and violet, Leela sat on the porch swing, knees drawn up, staring at the horizon. The prairie wind tugged at her hair, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. Cole joined her silently, taking the seat beside her. The two swung gently, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. After a long pause, her voice came, tremulous and barely above a whisper. There's a child," she admitted, her eyes fixed on the distant hills. "They took him from me. I've been searching for him ever since, but I don't even know if he's alive." Cole felt his chest tighten. He had expected hardship, danger, and perhaps grief, but the notion of a stolen child, her child, was something that pierced through him with a raw, protective intensity. "Tell me everything," he said gently, placing a reassuring hand over hers. She flinched slightly at the touch but did not pull away. And then she spoke, haltingly at first, then in a rush as years of fear and grief poured out. Her story unfolded in fragments. A cruel town sheriff who had seized her infant son under the guise of law, a life of servitude and coercion that had left her battered but unbroken, and a desperate escape under cover of darkness. Every memory brought fresh tears, but also a sense of release. Finally, someone was listening. Someone believed her. Cole listened, jaw tight, eyes narrowing at each injustice she recounted. He could see the scars she bore were not just physical. Every word she spoke carried the weight of betrayal, the heavy chain of survival in a world that had not been kind to her. "We'll find him," Cole said finally, voice firm and unwavering. "No one takes a child from a mother while I'm here. We'll fix this together." Leela turned to look at him, startled by the conviction in his tone. Her lips trembled. You really mean that?" she whispered. "I do," he replied, eyes steady. "You're safe now. That child, he's coming home, I promise." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation and careful planning. Cole rode into nearby towns, questioned travelers, and used every contact he had across the frontier. Leela helped where she could, recounting the details she remembered about the child and the man who had taken him. Each clue, no matter how small, was followed relentlessly. Each lead brought hope, but also fear. What if they were too late? What if he was harmed? During the long nights when the house was quiet and the stars stretched endlessly above the prairie, Leela found herself talking to Cole more openly. She spoke of dreams she had for her child, of the lullabies she had sung to him in the dark, and of the moment she had been torn away. Cole listened without interruption, offering a steady presence, a silent promise that she would not face her past alone. Their bond deepened in subtle ways. A hand brushed accidentally against hers while carrying water, a shared smile over a joke about stubborn horses, a moment of quiet understanding when neither had words. The kind of connection forged not in ease, but in the crucible of shared determination and trust. One night under a sky heavy with stars, Leela confided a detail she had kept hidden for years. "I know where he might be," she whispered, voice trembling. "There's a town not far from here, a man posing as his guardian. He's given the boy a new name, but he's there." Cole didn't hesitate. Dawn would find them on the road. He prepared the horses, packed provisions, and rode with a purpose that left no room for doubt. Leela followed, the fear of confronting the past mingled with the hope of reclaiming what had been stolen from her. The town was small and dusty but bustling with life. Cole and Leela moved cautiously, observing the streets and the people. Every glance, every conversation was a test, a puzzle to be solved. And then they found him. The boy, no older than 7, was playing outside a modest wooden house, the image of innocence juxtaposed sharply against the cruel story behind his stolen life. Leela's heart leapt, and for a moment she froze, unable to believe her eyes. "It's him," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. Cole approached the house first, quietly assessing the situation. The man inside was harsh, imposing, a figure who had built a lie around the child's identity. Cole's hand rested on the rifle he carried, not with aggression, but as a warning. Leela stayed hidden, heart pounding, her son just a few steps away. With calm authority, Cole knocked on the door. The man came out, eyes narrowing, suspicion clear. Cole spoke firmly. "That child belongs to her. You've taken him unlawfully. Return him now and no one gets hurt." The confrontation was tense but brief. Cole's reputation as a man of unwavering principle preceded him, and the man had little choice but to relinquish the boy. Leela ran forward, scooping him into her arms. The child clung to her as if he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. She held him tight, rocking him gently, whispering words she had longed to say for years. "Mommy's here. You're safe now. I've got you." Cole watched silently, a lump in his throat. He had seen fear, desperation, and cruelty, but he had also witnessed the miracle of reunion, the kind that could heal wounds no medicine could touch. Leela's tears were not just relief, but gratitude, hope, and love all mingled together. That night back at the ranch, as the fire crackled and the prairie wind sang through the open windows, Leela sat with her son on her lap. Cole joined them, a quiet protector, a steadfast presence. Words were unnecessary. The connection was deeper than speech. The stolen past had been confronted, reclaimed, and finally set right. Leela looked at Cole, her eyes full of unspoken emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, voice choked with tears. "Thank you for not selling me, for saving both of us." Cole's weathered hand rested over hers, steady and warm. "You were never for sale," he said softly. "And now, we make sure no one ever takes you from this ranch again." Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly, a symbol of freedom, hope, and new beginnings. The boy, nestled safely in his mother's arms, slept at last. Leela leaned her head against Cole's shoulder, feeling for the first time that perhaps she could finally rest. The darkness that had followed her for so long had lifted, replaced by a fragile but unshakable sense of peace. And as the firelight danced across the wooden walls, Cole knew that their lives had changed forever. They were no longer just a rancher and a woman seeking refuge. They were a family forged in courage, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. The prairie wind whispered through the night, carrying with it the promise of safety, healing, and the bright, uncharted future ahead.